Today we're going to be talking about 4K, which is double HD and in resolution. And I'm not a DP, I sometimes edit, but what I do care about as a director producer are things that people sometimes don't think about when they're choosing. So the first thing, and I would like to reference a lecture that I heard by a gentleman named Alex, I'm not going to say, over at NAB, who's the DP for the SNL shorts that you see, the Saturday Night Live shorts, and he was at the Canon booth, and so a lot of my opinion on this, when it was just starting to emerge, a lot of people shooting on 4K, comes from that. And and his, speaking on it and my subsequent learning about it. So anyway, the first thing that I think about, and totally relates to Saturday Night Live, by the way, is keeping things as progressive as possible when you are shooting. And what I mean by that is, right now, SNL has in their library, I'm using this as a perfect example, but you could use home videos or whatever, or I will use home videos. Because actually somebody was just making a comment about that because I was looking at cameras and somebody said, of course you want to shoot in 4K because, all those videos that you watch of your parents, getting married and stuff, they're in really bad resolution. And wouldn't it have been nice if they had picked the highest resolution so that we could still kind of enjoy it now, even though it still probably would have been like 720 or whatever, which still to the modern eye looks very low resolution. But even then, though, most internet still stream stuff in that resolution. Anyway, not always. I'm getting off topic here. Anyway, so with the first item being the longevity of your footage. So if you're making a movie now, and maybe you can get by with HD, wouldn't it be nice that you could go and screen it 30 years from now and it's still, maybe not 30, but at least 10, and you can screen it and it still looks like something that is modern or fairly modern compared to what is still out there. So like 10 years ago, the stuff that I shot in 720, it just not great to show, not great for my reel because it dates it. And I want you to keep that in mind if you're a technician or a director, cinematographer. Well, cinematographers will always push for the highest resolution because that's their thing, the cameras and all that. But if you can, if you're thinking about that, then you want to go with a 4K. The other thing about 4K, and I'm taking this directly from this lecture over at NAB, was that let's say you have this screen here that, is a 4K screen. But let's say, and we're doing this action right here, but there's some pretty funny stuff going on in the background over here. What you can do, especially if you're displaying it right now in 1080, which is HD, you can zoom into that and it won't degrade the quality of the footage if you're editing in HD right now. So if that's your purpose, and that definitely relates also, because doing things efficiently, and also, if you do have a lot of actions going on, or like I was acting in a movie where there was the main action going in front and I was in the background doing a bit with somebody else, and that was meant to catch the eye, but the editor director could have done a cut. Like, this was years ago before people were shooting in 4K, but let's say he was shooting this, he could have done a cut to what was going on back here and it would have looked seamless in 1020. A downside about shooting in 4K, and why I have actually switched to 720, and when I say all these numbers, it means like the DPI of the screen. I have to double check that. Anyway, it's just the designations of the different resolutions. I just wanted to clarify that when you shoot in 4K, it takes up a lot of space in your external drives. And I don't know what day this is in my 30-day challenge, but we're up there in the 20s or 30s right now. And I have already filled up a 1 terabyte hard drive, and that is crazy because I started shooting in high resolution for the very reason of longevity. I might want to use this for a course, or I don't know, I might want to repost this to people 5 years from now who are maybe like getting an email from me. I don't know. So I wanted to do it in the longevity sense of it, but then I was like, oh, I'll go just HD. And now I'm going, you know what? people on YouTube are just watching a talking head, I'm going to go with 720 so that I'm not filling up all this external drive space. And it's not even that I don't want to buy an external drive, it's that I have literally 15 external drives and it's driving me nuts because I have not sorted out, when I go through phases where I have tons of footage or tons of photography, and it overwhelms my system. It makes me not want to go out and shoot more because I'm just like, oh my God, I have so much material right now. And that's also, it makes me like kind of get overwhelmed and not want to do things like make a reel or, update my, photo website. But I digress. It takes up a lot of space. So if you are limited in your storage capacity for data, maybe consider shooting at a lower resolution. And so I'm going to just peek at my notes because there was one more thing. Oh, also, two more things. So you obviously need equipment that will shoot 4K, and sometimes if you're looking at a project to do it 4K, that will get more expensive, although that's definitely become more reasonable lately. It used to, even just a few years ago, I remember looking into 4K and being like, okay, that camera is either going to have to be rented or I'm going to have to hold off a little bit buying a 4K camera. But now you can definitely do it on under $1,000 to get a camera and probably a decent lens that that will allow you to shoot 4K. And so if you're into buying, that's the way to go. Or renting. Renting is also a reasonable way to go at this point. So, and then finally, you need people who know the technology. And you also need somebody who have the technology to, manage it as well in post-production. So let's say that, and I'm speaking on this because sometimes I know that some people watching this are doing some things ultra low budget, and I don't know, there are so many different computer systems out there. And I know for me, I just put an SSD in my 2011 MacBook Pro, and but the previous system that was on it, the native system, would never have handled. I tried to do 4K footage in there, and it was just like, trudging along. It was really, really slow. So now it's like awesome. Maybe I'll do a video about that. So you have to consider the technicians on set, and especially your camera department. Will they be able to do 4K and understand how that works, and understand that there might be shutter speed restrictions depending on the camera. And if they're great DPs, they will understand their cameras, or they'll read up on whatever camera you have before they get to set and find out what the limitations are, if there are any. But it's something to consider about your technicians. Also, it's something to consider about post-production, because let's say you have the storage, but you get in contact with someone who has a 2011 MacBook Pro, which will be very, very slow to edit, or maybe their editing system does not even handle 4K, you're going to have to think about that too. Or if you're the editor and you are, like, as a director, you could be. I am typically my own editor. And so, I have been holding off on 4K because I knew my system couldn't handle it, and now I just upgraded my system and I'm ready to shoot in 4K. But I just am, yeah, so that's that. So, and I'm actually, so a little bit about where I'm at. I do want to shoot in 4K because my next project, I do want to have longevity, and I don't really care about what's happening in the background, but sometimes I'll be surprised because it's a documentary. The downside is and now I have a computer that can edit it, but the downside is I am going to need a lot of storage, because what I find with documentaries, there's so much overshoot, and sometimes you'll be interviewing for 40 minutes and maybe you'll use like 5 minutes of that interview throughout your movie. And so I definitely, if I'm going to be shooting in 4K, I definitely need more storage, and I need more cards to, store while I shoot. And I have to consider the size of card, because I wouldn't want to be in a great interview and then have to like switch out cards, and then it's a completely different moment. So it's just, you can be more conscious of that in a narrative movie, but if you're like right in the moment and shooting something, and then all of a sudden you're maybe only using like a 32 gig card, then you're gonna have to, hold on a minute, hold that thought, don't stop crying yet, let me switch out my card. Okay, tell me about this beautiful thing that you're talking about and is making you emote. I mean, if you're shooting a documentary, those are the moments you want, and you don't want to have to switch out your memory card in the midst of that. So that's another consideration for 4K, maybe not, maybe, or just have the right equipment if your budget allows it. And that's all I'm going to talk about today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.